Hey, what's up everyone? It's Rich. Thanks for watching the problem solved. So today I have the oil change required. It's been indicating that for a while. My 2021 Dodge Durango. I got the 0W20 full synthetic oil. This oil filter, both from Walmart. It's going to require 6 quarts. So I got the 5 and the single quart. You're going to need a 13 millimeter socket or wrench, 10 millimeter as well, and also 24 millimeter or the 15/16 if it's SAE or standard will work as well. That one will get the filter cap off, and of course, you know, your regular stuff for an oil change, funnel, drain pan. All right, so we're under the vehicle. I'm going to try and do this as quick as possible. There's like 2 parts, and they're both about 10 to 14 minutes long, so I'm going to use double speed on a lot of the video, the long parts. I'm just showing you where the drain plug is located, basically under the vehicle. Give you a good idea how to get to it. I can get to it. I can slide under it without a jack, so that's how I prefer to do it. I just barely fit, but it works. I could reach it. It's a 13 millimeter on the plug, and that's what I'm using there. The 10 millimeter is going to be, you'll see the next step. Yeah, when we pop the hood, under the hood, there's a engine cover. So, you know, standard stuff. Drain the oil. Once the plug is out, hold on to the plug. Watch for the washer. Make sure that that washer, you don't lose it, of course. You want to make sure you install it again with a washer on it. I've done that. Accidentally double checked and had to re-drain oil out. So I just put the plug back in for a little while there because I wanted to slow the flow of oil down. I didn't know if it was going to overwhelm the oil pan. So here's the engine cover. In order to get to the filter on top of the engine, you have that little cover part that lifts up, but then there's the 10 millimeter in there. You can either use a star if you got a star wrench or socket, but 10 millimeters on the outside works as well. Now we got the oil drain plug and the bolt that holds the cover on. There's the engine oil fill. So once that bolt is out, there's this other larger cover that pops off. You could try to get each corner to show you the connection points. It just pops on and off. So there's like rubber grommets on the cover, and like, you know, little plastic protruding spikes kinda, and just sits on there. And then you can access the filter once that cover is completely off. Doing it one hand recording is a little difficult, but once you got the cover off, you'll be able to see there's the fill. And you can take that cap off, put it somewhere where you're not going to lose it. I usually loosen it and sit it back on top, and then there's the filter. You can see the proximity there. And that's the one you need, the 24 millimeter on the top there, or 15/16 worked for me. All right, so once pretty much all the oil is drained, it's just barely dripping, you can put the plug back in, the drain plug. I sped this up, and I'm single-handedly tightening this because I'm recording with the other hand. So just forgive me for the extra movement on the camera and the speed, but I'm sure you don't want to, you know, watch in real time a bolt being tightened. So, you know, this was 13 millimeter. It's very easy to get to. You just need a socket and a ratchet. And again, I don't use a jack and stands. I'm able to do this from the ground with the truck just sitting in place. So tighten that up. Should be the torque to spec, and that's that. So I like to get the oil pan receptacle that you're collecting the oil in, the old oil. I like to get it up out of the way and then open up the filter. You know, I open the cap before, and next I usually open up the filter. That'll allow air into the system and get, you know, I guess make sure all the oils is out. So here's the 24 millimeter, or I use 15/16. You're gonna need an extension too on the socket probably, because it's down in a spot where it's definitely difficult to get to without the extension. So the first and the last oil change that I had done was by the dealer. It was a complimentary. So this was on pretty tight. I don't know if they torqued it or what. You know, I usually take a look at the torque specs, but just from experience, you know when's tight enough usually, you know, when's too tight. So just based on, you know, how they tightened it down, kind of muscle memory, I'll torque it back the same way. But being that it's plastic, I guess, you know, I took my time carefully, cracked it loose, and then removed the filter. And whenever I'm working, you know, on the engine, you can see the filter's attached to the cap. I just grabbed a rag, like to keep a rag handy. I prefer not to drip the oil all over the place. Definitely speeds up the cleanup. You can see in the inside of the filter cap, that's where the filter actually attaches. So you want to take note of that. And you see how the filter here just kind of clicks in there? It sort of snaps onto the cap. So you just pull it out to get it off. The cap has an O-ring on it all the way at the end there. And the new filter comes with a new O-ring. So I read the instructions every time I have instructions in front of me, see what they say to do. And they supplied a new O-ring with the filter, so that generally tells me that's recommended to be replaced. And that's generally common sense. But if you're in a pinch, you could probably get by using the old one. But I always replace when a new one is provided, and I'd recommend you do the same. I just like to also match them up together, the old and the new. It's first time for me doing the oil change myself on this vehicle. Make sure I ordered it properly and everything matches up and it makes sense. So I even like to check the fit before I do anything else. And this definitely appears to look the same size and fits. So we're good to go on that. Next part is the O-ring. The O-ring is pushed beyond all the threads. There's an area on the cap that actually the O-ring sits in. So this is the old one, so it's okay to use a screwdriver or something if you need to kind of get it beyond where the threads are. You don't want to damage the threads, of course, but you can use the screwdriver because, you know, over time the heat and everything in that spot will you know, probably get that O-ring a little bit seized on there. And mine was as well. So you can kind of work it off with the screwdriver. You can see right here. It does come off pretty easily. So with the old O-ring off, you can start to put the new O-ring on. Grab the new O-ring, slide it over the filter end. Again, I'm doing this with one hand, so it might look a little clumsy, obviously, but Slide it on, make sure it goes in the same spot that the old one came off from, and you really can't go wrong. Once the new O-ring is in the spot where it belongs, crack open your new oil, and you're going to always want to start a new O-ring out wet. So you're going to take some fresh oil, clean oil, and soak that O-ring. Next, you're going to want to just dip your finger into the oil, get it good and wet. If you notice these gloves, they're Hardy touchscreen gloves, work gloves from Harbor Freight, and I put silicone or latex, medical gloves or whatever the other type of disposable gloves over on top of them so that the liquid can't even get through. So that's why I dip my finger in with the gloves on. It's like double protection. But you just want to make sure you soak up that new O-ring good and wet. Now just going to place the filter assembly, the oil filter and cap, and put it back in the spot where we took the old one out from. Just gently slide it in there. You don't want to get any debris on it on the way in. If you can avoid it, not a big deal, but... And make sure your threads are lined up. If it's starting out going in very tight, you would expect there's something wrong. So take your time, pull it back out if you have to. Make sure at a weird angle like that, you double check that it's like turning and tightening without much resistance. Hand tighten for now. Be sure to check out part 2. I'm going to leave part 1 here.